Tao of Rodney comes in Season 3 of Atlantis, and a lot of things have happened since Rising. But I think it's safe to discuss it without much in the way of spoilers. Right now, Rodney McKay is leading a small team through Atlantis to shut some of the stuff down. His banter shows us why the audience loves him.
He used to leave candles burning everywhere.
Well, you know what? No one wants to hear any more stories about how poor you were as a child, all right? We already feel as sorry for you as is humanly possible.
Actually, I suppose it shows us that the audience loves him despite all reasons suggesting they shouldn't. Rodney is arrogant and has a big mouth, which are usually the kind of people we like to see hit in the face. And yet I'll be the first to admit that despite that, he's endearing. One reason we'll get to during the episode, but another one is that Rodney serves as such an effective surrogate for the audience because he does the things that we would like to do. He doesn't suffer fools gladly, he's quick-witted, smart, and is into geek culture. You don't snark his technical explanations because he's going to bounce snark right back at you. Plus, he's pretty genre-savvy and everyman. About halfway through the first season, I wished I had been watching this on an editor because I really would have liked to have collected the many faces of Rodney, which would have been all the looks of "we are so screwed" that he has had throughout the show. Even the title sequence is him looking like he just noticed something that is going to doom them all. Despite being a genius and an asshole, he is incredibly relatable. He and Zelenka argue a bit over how to shut down the latest bit of high-tech gadgetry that they found, but things go a bit wrong and he gets sort of space swirlied. Energy coils around him and lightning flies around the room, so something obviously weird has happened for sure. He might be a Highlander now or something. Even when Dr. Beckett says he's fine, Rodney's not buying it. He knows what show he's on.
I mean, who knows what kind of long-term effects I could be in for? I mean, this gross mutation, giantism, invisibility?
That would be cool, and I turned into a bug.
Oh yeah, I remember that. And I don't mean starring in Kafka's Metamorphosis. But everyone else is certain that Rodney's overreacting. He is a bit of a hypochondriac. But at lunch, as he's eating, he hears the rest of his team discussing his condition as if he wasn't there, which is rude, except for one fact. He's not there. He's on the other side of the room. See, he's got super hearing now. Also, in a subtle bit, when he gets up to confront them and grabs his tablet, it slides into his hand first. Definitely cooler than turning into a bug. Well, there's no time for a debate. One of the other teams is pinned down by Wraith forces, so they're going to need to rescue them. And while they're gone, Zelenka calls Dr. Weird down to help him out. She has experience as a diplomat, so she has an affinity for languages. He wants her to confirm the translation of what Rodney was zapped with. And it seems to confirm that his DNA has been diddled. When he returns, there's even more of a mystery. Rodney insists that he managed to make all the Wraith weapons jam with the power of his mind. And naturally, the number of people who believe that is 0. Well, there is one way to prove it.
Rodney!
He's thinking a happy thought. Well, there's no doubt about it. He's got superpowers.
Does superego count as a power?
Oh, sure. I think Iron Man has it, actually. As they hash it out, they remember that among the many evil plots of Anubis over on SG-1, there was a device that accelerated a person's development so that they could ascend. That might be what Rodney has stumbled into, something like that. And there's only one important question on everyone's mind. Can I be next? But on Dr. Weir's mind, it's, is this going to blow up in our faces? So besides the guards that are in the infirmary, Ronan shows up. Ronan's a local. He was captured by the Wraith, had a device implanted in his spine to track him, and then he was hunted across the galaxy for sport, so he doesn't like the Wraith too much. He's not a big fan of McKay either. Wonder why.
You know, we could be a team. You could be my sidekick.
Sidekick.
Yeah, it'd be like Batman and Ronan. Has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, you keep eating like that, it's more like Fat Man.
Well, mutation is the gift that keeps on giving. Just walking out the door gives McKay a new power, mind reading, which he quickly uses to maximum annoyance, like holding an entire conversation with Dr. Weir without giving her a chance to say a word.
She wants you to shoot me if you think for even 1 second that I might be trying to take over the city for my own evil purposes. I'm kidding. That was a joke. So, is your weapon set to stun? Wait, never mind. There, did it myself. Okay, to the chair room. Ronan.
But at least he's not abusing his powers, unless you count swiping people's donuts with his telekinesis. In fact, he's using a chair like the one in Antarctica to improve the city's power grid. But with great power comes great big piles of bad news, like death.
What do you mean I'm gonna die? I'm not even sick. I feel great. Never better.
That ancient device
Has accelerated my evolution.
Yeah, Better all buckle in here. This is a long chain of reasoning we're all going to get through here.
Eventually, I'll reach a point where I'm physically capable of ascension, but ascension takes more than that. There's a mental component. I need to know how to make it happen, which I don't. Yet.
Probably nothing sums up Rodney quite like his presumption that apotheosis is just one more problem he has to solve.
I'm getting smarter by the minute. It's a pretty good assumption I'll be able to figure it out on the way. Okay, so it's not as easy as that. Well, even if I don't, so I stay a highly evolved human. I mean, I don't have to ascend. It's a choice, right?
The worst part is I'm going to keep breaking this up, and then it's just going to get flagged by YouTube anyway.
No? What do you mean, no? Oh, that stupid ancient device doesn't work properly, does it? It's set in motion a series of genetic mutations that will result in my death if I don't ascend?
There is something easier about this.
Well, there are some things you just shouldn't do. If Spider-Man is reaching the top of his arc, you don't flash him or he's going to get distracted and forget to throw the next web line, and next thing you know, Dr. Octopus has stolen all the city's kittens for some diabolic scheme of his. In this case, telling him he'll die in the middle of reworking the power grid winds up causing a malfunction. Okay, either all those kittens were used to create a powerful static electricity gun, or else Rodney's fixes have caused an overload. Either way, Zelink is in trouble. They wheel him in for the flatline clear scene that you know is coming, but Rodney is not going to get upstaged in his own episode, so he rushes in, and thanks to his touch, he completely heals Zelinka's wounds. The power of Jesus flows through me! But even though he now has a whole new cool power, he isn't celebrating anymore. Instead, he heads off to invent a new form of math incomprehensible to the rest of mankind, like the IRS uses. But Weir suggests that he doesn't have to die. He could try to ascend. Except Rodney thinks that's a bunch of bullshit. Life is about working towards achievement to him. It's one thing to have the cheat codes thanks to these powers. It's another to just suddenly have all of the answers and nothing left to strive towards. But as you recall, and spoiler if you haven't been watching my SG-1 reviews, Daniel ascended and then became human again. So what's stopping him from just ascending and then willing himself to become a human again? That idea he likes, so he gets stuff from SGC to see if he can try to figure out how to make him ascend.
I really don't think we're going about this the right way.
If you're a highly evolved super genius, put up your hand. Oh.
I'll help you ascend just so you can annoy people on another plane of existence for a change. After a few more minutes of this abuse, we get the gist. A mental state is ultimately just a physical state. It's just about getting your brain in the right mode. So all Rodney has to do is get into the physical state needed for ascension, and he'll live. He's really optimistic, which probably helps the process, but the numbers don't seem to be backing up the theory. Weir doesn't think this is going to work, but knows that Rodney will be resistant to anything else. He's not the most spiritual man there is. I think he calls Richard Dawkins a fundy. So she asks Shepard to help him. Shepard had helped some other people try to ascend once. Not while he was a bug. That was a different episode. Shepard is not too sure he can help, though. Mostly what he did was just fought a scary monster, but that's more experience than most of them have, so he's been volunteered. If you've ever heard the expression, the blind leading the blind, well, they wish it was going that well. This is the blind teaching the blind to paint by numbers.
Imagine yourself sitting on a Ferris wheel.
What?
Not many people know this, but Buddha, in fact, spent the most formative years of his life working at Six Flags.
Look, I told you I didn't pay much attention to what the ancients were teaching me. I liked Ferris wheels, so that's what I thought about. And the fact that the woman teaching me how to meditate was very attractive.
Why am I not surprised you didn't ascend, huh?
Plus, there's the problem that Rodney is a problem solver, so whenever he tries to clear his head, some new idea just pops in there. It's like trying to meditate to the sound of bagpipes. I change my thoughts, I change my world. I change my thoughts, I change my world. So Rodney goes back to what he knows, trying to solve as much as he can about the mechanics of the universe before the end, although grim at the knowledge that that's only days away now. But Weir stops by to try to set him on the path that maybe what he needs to do is to start shedding himself of any lingering guilt that he might have.
Like what?
That I can't tell you. But maybe you could start reading your own mind.
You came in here just to say that line, didn't you? Still, the other reason that the audience can ignore Rodney's jackassery most of the time is that however much of a jerk he might act, he does care deeply for the welfare of others. He doesn't deliberately set out to hurt people's feelings. It's just a consequence of Rodney being Rodney. But when the chips are down, he is, hard as it is to imagine, noble. Okay, really hard to imagine, but still. So naturally the first up is Zelenka, because as Rodney notes, he's the one who's most often on the receiving end of Rodney's dickish behavior. Also that butting heads with Ronan, well, metaphorically of course, Rodney wants to make up for that and asks about those scars that the Wraith had given him. Are they a painful reminder, or are they a badge of honor? I mean, with Ronan you can't be sure.
Hope you don't mind. I just healed them.
What's notable is that Rodney didn't have to do it that way, and I don't just mean the hug. He can read minds, remember, but he doesn't want to intrude even if it's to do Ronan a favor. It's part of what Shepard had said before. It's not a means to an end. This has to be genuine on Rodney's part. And we see that it is. He gives Weir a biography of her that he's whipped up to set the record straight. There's been a lot of controversies around her time running Atlantis. The Wraith, the Replicators, those naked selfies. He wanted people to know that she did a good job running this place. But despite all these good deeds, despite all this unburdening of himself, he's not even close to what he needs to reach ascension. And during another session with Shepard, Rodney collapses. He's close to the point where his brain will become so advanced that, I guess, the lower brain functions like keeping the heart and lungs going, that's going to stop. I'm not sure how that works. I guess it's like the absent-minded professor syndrome or something. You're thinking so hard about how to make practical fusion a reality that you walk out of the house without your pants on. Except you really do die of embarrassment in this case, so it's important to try to figure this out. So Rodney works at it. Clear skies, clear blue skies, all your troubles floating away. But Rodney seems like wherever he is now, he's reached some kind of peace. I can read your mind, and I know you peed in my coffee and blame Zelenka for it. Actually, he's projecting the answer into Beckett's thoughts, and soon they use the ancient device. Before you ask, they tried stuff earlier and it wouldn't reverse the process. But with an original sample of Rodney's DNA, they are able to put him back the way he was. But of course, there are some changes to get used to.
It's good to have you back, buddy.
Yes.
Some harder to imagine than others. But we have all learned something from this, the importance of telling people how you really feel.
Oh, I said it.
See, you love me. It's true. You've said it. Now I know. I always suspected it. In fact, you know what? I've always noticed that there's been an indefinable and yet magical chemistry between us.
No matter how much it might bite you in the ass later. Tao of Rodney gets a stamp of strongly recommended. Not only will some of this have further consequences on the show, but there's a great mix of character and humor to it. The character isn't just about Rodney. We see opportunities in the others. Zelenka's commitment to his job and his work ethic, studying the machine and trying to find a way to reverse the process at seemingly all hours of the day and night. Dr. Weir's compassion is shown throughout the episode. Shepard's mix of good friend and yet he's an insufferable partner attitude towards McKay. Plus his refusal to discuss Rodney's eulogy. He's a man who's had friends die before, remember. He doesn't want to think about having to do this again. And so on and so on. Everybody gets a little bit of a chance. Even Beckett shows what a good friend he is to Rodney by silently tolerating his superior attitude because he knows Rodney is in mortal danger, even if at the moment he's just acting like a perfectly healthy ass. It's also interesting the way the episode turns terminal illness sideways because, on the one hand, that's what Rodney has, but on the other, there's a way out that isn't medical tech answer. Rodney has to face what he believes is his inevitable death with this goofy X factor involved. Yet in that, we see a combination of defeatist and pragmatist in him. When it seems like the way out is just beyond him, he might try it a little bit, but his thoughts always go back to needing to make the most of the time he has left, whether it's devising new theories, creating new inventions, or even leaving instructions that his body be autopsied and studied to see if anything can benefit medical science from what has happened to him. He may have freaked out a little over news of his death, but no more than probably anybody else would. And if all he had left was a legacy, he wanted to make sure it would be a great one. Plus the other thing, the making the most of the time he had left, he made good use of that in trying to let people know that he cared about them.
How does that relate to your idiot brother burning the house down?
If we don't succeed,
We're not going to have to live in a tent in the dead of winter.